Hello, this is Alan again. This time I'll do a presentation on the workings of the ECL Enterprise Control Language ITERATE Built-in and the workings thereof. So what does this wee beastie do for you? Well, for example, if you want to collect data, as you sweep through a data set, you may want to remove records but retain information, accumulate information from records as you go. So in my example here, my input data set on the left hand side, I've got a series of records with some kind of grouping criteria and the data, and I've got a name or names associated with them. And the outputs, really, I just want a single record with all the names associated with that grouping in one record. So that's my target output from this input, and let's see how iterate can give me what I want. So first of all, let's go through the workings. Rather than showing you ECL, let's just see what it actually does in here. Right, so the first point before you call iterate is that you really should be working on a sorted set, sorted by the grouping that you're interested in. If you don't do that, you just won't get the answers you expect. So given that rider, the first time you call iterate, we're given a pair of input records, and on the first iteration it's slightly special in the fact the left hand side is always the output record of the previous iteration, but you haven't had a previous iteration yet, so the left hand side is always blank. That's blank for the type of field it is. So if it's a string, it's an empty string. If it's integer or unsigned, it's 0. If it's real, it's 0.0, things like that. And the first iteration, the first record of the input data set comes in on the right hand side. So you have two input parameters to iterate, the left and right. And in this particular situation, I see that the groupings are different. So all I want to do is keep the data from the right hand side, and the output from the iterate is in the same format as the inputs, obviously, because we're going to feed this output record into the left hand side as the input for the second iteration, but it's also put in the output data set here, so I'm keeping a tabs of the outputs as well as we go. So the second iteration, we're going to process the Nina record of A. So Anna's coming in as the previous result comes in on the left hand side, as I said, and Nina comes in on the right hand side. I detect inside the transform that the groupings are the same, so I want to concatenate data, which is what I do, and this is the output record from the iterate, which is saved here in the shown here in the output data set. And we go on to the third iteration. Okay, so that second iteration outputs now become the left hand side to the third iteration of called to iterate, and the third record is come in as on the right hand side of the parameter, in other words the two parameters here. I've detected that the grouping is different, so I've finished with group A, so I now want to collect data on group B, which is all I do. So effectively this third iteration just copies out B to its output, the right hand side to the output, and again here it is in the output data set. Fourth iteration, we've got the output from the third coming in on the left hand side, the fourth record coming in on the right hand side, and because they're the same group, we want to concatenate data, accumulate data. This goes into the output, and as this is the result of the fourth iteration of iterate, and also goes into the output side and goes into the left hand side of the fifth iteration, along with and this iteration is identical to the fourth iteration in so much as it's another B record, so we're just concatenating more data. We then get to the sixth iteration and the last iteration. Here the groupings are different, so Alan, we want Alan in a separate group. We finished with B, and so we just want Alan out on its own there, and that the iterate will then terminate at that point. So this doesn't quite produce what I was showing in my first slide, which is here, but I'll come to that in a moment. So what does the ECL look like to perform this operation? Let's come out of that. So Control Z, let's do that. So this is the input data set as seen in the spreadsheet. This is the iterate command itself. Its first parameter is always the input data set sorted. Second parameter is always the transform, which takes two inputs, the left hand side and right hand side. You can call a function here, but in this particular example I've just put the transform as an inline function. So here wherever left refers to the left hand side of the left hand input parameter, and right refers to the right input parameter, and self refers to the output format, which of course is the same as the input format. And once we've so if we set up val, if val's different, for left hand side, right hand side key is different, we've got started a new group. So all we want to do is preserve the right hand side of the data, and if they're the same, then we've obviously got the same group, and we want to retain accumulate data. So we're just in this case saying the left hand side val plus comma separator plus the right hand side information, and then self becomes equal to right, saying any other fields, which is key, is just the right hand side. If you noticed, all data just got preserved, moved over from the right hand side. And let's submit that and see what we get. Here we go, Alan, there, just as we shown in the spreadsheet. Now it isn't quite what we wanted, but that's easily fixed with some code I wrote earlier. Oh, oops, wrong way. That's it. Okay, so I've just added a dedupe, wrapped the iterate inside a dedupe. I haven't actually done a video on dedupe yet, but I will be doing one. It's deduplicate, get rid of duplicate records on a particular field. The duplication be dictated by a field in the input data set. In this case, we've just got key as our duplicates, our detection for duplicates, and right in the context of dedupe means retain the last of the duplicate records. If I'd put left in here, I would retain the first of the duplicate records, but what we want in this particular example is the last record. So if I submit that, there we go, we get exactly what we wanted. We've taken all the data from the input data set, and we've collected together the data we require for each group. We've grouped up the data into its grouping criteria. I think that's all I've got to say about iterate at the moment. I mean, it's the usual transform there, so you can put skips in, and whatever you do with transforms you can do here in this context. I think that's about it. So I'll see you on the next video. Bye.